Shop the Sherwin-Williams Memorial Day sale and get 30% off paints and stains May 16th through the 26th. With prices starting at $34.29, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your bedroom, living room, or home office, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we got, as always, have a great show for you here Thursday night. First up, of course, is going to be Coach's Corner. I've got a couple of great professionals coming on here in just a moment. And then a little bit later on in the show, we're going to be dealing with part two of a two-part series that I started last week. My very special guest tonight, of course, is Mr. Peter Willis. He's the president and founder of the Willis Organization. And part two tonight is going to be covering people and relationship building tips for your business. Of course, we're referring to golf businesses out there. And for you entrepreneurs as well, there's going to be some great tips in here as well on how to sort of navigate the waters while you're out in the golf course and do some great business as well and develop those relationships both on and off the golf course. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. So he'll be joining us. Of course, we had part one last week, which was the 7 tips to growing your golf business. For those of you that tuned in, I hope you got lots of good information from that segment as well. And if you missed it, as always, you can go back to our main page, blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and scroll down to the on-demand section, and you can pick up the recorded version if you weren't able to tune in live last week. As always, though, Thursday evenings, we are live from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central, or 7 to 9 for those of you on the East Coast under Eastern Standard Time. And you're always welcome to call into the show anytime. We'd always love to hear from you at area code 646-716-4667. And you're always welcome to email me any questions or comments about the show at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Or if you're interested in coming on as a guest, if you're in the golf industry or affiliated somehow with the golf industry, and you think you have something to share with the audience, I'd love to have you join us here. We've got some room coming up here in the fall as we navigate out of the summer months into the fall season. Got some openings there as well. So love to hear from you. Again, you can reach me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Always update on social media, Facebook and Twitter. My Facebook page is facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog is the main one, but you can also get it on my personal page as well. I update every week on the show. And also on Twitter, my Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO, and that's CEO in capital letters. As I mentioned, I got two great guys on the Coach's Corner panel tonight, Pete Buchanan and Mike Fay. And let me just tell you a little bit about each of them, and then I'll bring them on and we'll get right into our discussion for this evening. Pete, of course, has been on the show many, many times. He's the founder and director of instruction and owner of Plain Simple Golf, LLC. Plain Simple Golf houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. Pete's been teaching over the last 30 years plus, actually. And during that time, he's been simplifying his golf swing philosophy in an effort to make it simple for players like you to play this great game. Mike Fay as well, very prominent in the industry as well. He's a PJ Director of Player Performance at the BOYNE Golf Academy, and he's got 20-plus years experience as a teacher professional and coach, and it's certainly easy to understand why he has become a leader in the world of golf instruction, including everything from cutting-edge social media network techniques to having a mobile app, and he's helped really change the face of teaching golf through all of his efforts as well. So, gentlemen, guys, welcome to Coach's Corner on Golf Talk Live.
Thanks, Ted. Great to be here.
Thank you, Ted.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for joining me tonight. And as always, I appreciate you giving of your time on the show. Okay, Guy, I gave you a little bit of the heads up, if you will, on what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to talk about the 4 stages of learning an activity. Of course, we're going to be talking about golf here. And there's a reason why. It's really twofold. I want the average players out there, particularly some of the younger, newer guys that are getting into golf, or gals as well. But it's also some great tips, I think, for you teacher professionals and coaches out there, again, that are maybe just getting into the profession, or some of you guys that maybe been around for a while that maybe forget how we handle certain things. These 2 guys are going to help sort of put some things together tonight. So, guys, I'm going to start off with stage 1. And they're going to sound a little bit odd at first until we get into the scenarios. But the first stage of learning a new activity is unconscious incompetence. And I'll give you a good example of that. And then, Pete, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. So here's our example for stage 1. And we'll just give a fictitious name. We'll say Brian is new to golf. He's maybe watched it on TV. He's maybe been out to a golf course with a friend, but hasn't really played the game yet. But he's decided that, hey, this looks like fun, and I'm going to give it a shot. Decides to give it a try. And at this stage, at this point, rather, this becomes part of stage 1, which is learning the activity, which is called, as I said, unconsciously incompetent. And here's typically what happens. After maybe an attempt or 2, he or she, in this case Brian, has discovered that this activity is a little more difficult, and it looks like that he's sort of had a few failures, if you will, and isn't sure whether or not how to handle this activity. So, Pete, I want you to take this scenario. This is sort of a newbie to golf. We don't want to scare him away with sort of beating him down with a whole bunch of golf lessons necessarily. How do we approach somebody that's just sort of maybe had their toes wet, if you will, in the water a little bit, but maybe hasn't played very much? How do we sort of handle a newbie like that and don't sort of scare him away with too much information too quickly?
Well, one of the first things I'd want to find out from them individually is what other activities have they done, whether it's sports-wise or anything else, and to find out some commonalities and things they've done before and relating those back into golf and what we're trying to do. You know, golf's a side-on game, so if they played some tennis, if they played softball, baseball, they're familiar with some side-on activity. And so you can begin to relate the golf swing back to some of the things they've done before to get some something that's familiar to them, and that way it keeps them a little bit more positive, a little bit more, I've swung a bat before, I can do this, and then begin to relate, the thing that I always try to do is in everything that we pick up with golf is what are we trying to do? And so to get them an understanding of, what are we trying to do with this ball versus sitting here on the ground, what's the object, what are we trying to do with it? And to give them, something similar to what they've done before and relate it back into, okay, now, with that in mind, here's what we're going to do with this ball, and here's what's necessary to make this ball do what it's going to do. So giving them an understanding of what's necessary first, and then relate it back into some similar things from their past to help them get familiar with using the golf club from there.
Right. Well said. Mike, maybe you can just expand a little bit. Obviously, you've had opportunities, I'm sure, over the years of your teaching experience where you've got a new player come in. They're really not that familiar. They don't understand golf that much. They, have seen maybe a little bit on TV, or maybe they've been up to watch a buddy of theirs at the driving range. So you obviously want to invite that person. You want to make it a welcoming experience. What are some of the early steps that you try to do to welcome, as I said, Brian, we'll use as an example, into the golf experience?
Well, like Pete said, the interview process is so important, Ted. It is to find out about the person, get to know them more. How can you relate different things that happen in the game of golf to things that they've experienced in the past? And a lot of times what ends up happening is that they start to understand a lot faster. That also, relating it to learning different activities as well. It looks like it's easy, but you have to learn it. And so when we start teaching players like that, we usually start out with, smaller strokes, right? And then we build our way up to building a golf swing. So, starting out around the green, things like that, and teaching them those things, contact, all that kind of stuff. It's so important. But the big deal that we want to see, and I think it's terribly important, especially with a new golfer, is some success. We have to have some success, some way to grade success, whether it be, whatever it is. If I'm videoing them, or if they're hitting it closer to the hole, or if they're just hitting it, period. That's important. And showing them some success keeps them coming back to playing golf.
Right. And well said. And I like both approaches here. I think that's very sound advice. And again, the reason I wanted to tackle these topics, and I said this to you guys off air, I get a lot of requests, and people will ask, and I'm sure both of you have in your time as teach professionals, that they want to understand the basics, of how to fix this or how to fix that, and that's all well and done. But I think sometimes people have to understand a little bit what goes behind the thought process and where they actually are. I think, like you said, Mike, as well, during the interview stage is a good assessment time to find out where that individual is, where they are in the process. Are they, a very early stage beginning golfer, like we just discussed with Brian here as our example, or are they a little bit further down the food chain, if you will? So we want to see where and how we sort of formulate our game plan to make it a better and more pleasant experience. So we're going to move into stage 2 now. As I said, the first 2 stages are fairly quick. And we're going to get more detail with this stage than we did the first one here. And this is, of course, Brian, as our sort of fictitious golfer here. He's come into your establishments here, and he's maybe seen golf on TV or maybe tried it, as an example. But now he's been out and he's tried it a couple times, maybe even several times, but has very quickly come to the conclusion that he's not very good. And this is what we refer to as the consciously incompetent stage, when you start to turn down invitations and participate in activities to avoid being embarrassed. They're not quite good enough yet to get out, maybe play in a tournament or anything like that. So they're starting to sort of turn down, or somebody will invite them out to play because they see them at the range, and they're not quite at that stage yet. So for this individual golfer, of course, this is the opportunity for them to really get their feet wet, maybe buy some instructional books, tapes that are available through different golf professionals out there, or maybe even sign up for some lessons. So, Pete, I'm going to go back to you if I will. This is sort of the thinking time. When you start to learn the techniques, we want to be able to help them to sort of master a little bit better the activity. So let's move them from stage 1 into stage 2. What are some of the steps that we're going to look at?
Well, I think you hit it pretty good there with trying to get them some videos so they can see, some of the actions that are taking place. They can see a little bit of the game being played. Different books. I go to one standard all the time. It's John Jacobs' Practical Golf. I think it's one of the most sound, fundamental, simplistic books there is, and I always make sure that any new player gets that book to read, because it just gives them a good understanding of what's going on. But from playing the game, I always like them to continue to watch it on TV, watch what they're doing, see how they're moving around, and just to get familiar with the different types of shots that are there. And then also, not only that, taking them around, and I like to take them out on the golf course and play a few holes where they're just watching what's going on. Or a lot of times I'll just put them in the cart and we'll go out on the golf course and just watch people play. And we'll describe the different types of shots they're doing so they can see them and hit them. And even though they've had some skill in doing some of these things, it's still good for them to see them in action, see what's going on, and, watch people having success, watching them doing those. And it just gets them a situation where they think, I can do this. Look at this. They're right around the green. They're knocking it up on the green. So I think from that stage, once you've had some time to, hit a few shots, do some things, I think continuing to look at the game and, because there's a lot to it. I mean, it's not just, you have putting, chipping, pitching, and those types of things, but, then you got to put them into action. So I think from there, right, getting them to move themselves into some different types of books and videos they can watch, and also watching TV and just getting out on the golf course and seeing how it works. I think that will help them a bunch.
Right, I agree wholeheartedly. Great comments, by the way. Mike, what about how do we approach? Obviously, this individual's receptive now. They've played a couple times. They're not really comfortable quite yet. They haven't played enough. They're still having some reservations. So we want to sort of draw them in a little bit. And as Pete said, we want to certainly get them to watch some golf. maybe on TV, watch some of the professionals play, and obviously, that's going to be a little bit intimidating and daunting because they're great, well-rounded professionals. But at the same time, they might be able to pick up some ideas there. But what about where do we start with the game itself? How do we start? Do we start with the short game, do you think, or do we work basically on the fundamentals just to get them an idea of grip, stance, and all that sort of thing, or where do we navigate them so that we don't overwhelm them, as I said earlier?
No, first off, it's great that Brian came back for a second lesson, which is fantastic, right? Obviously, we flew through stage one and did a good job. No, when we're starting out, I think it is important to learn as much about the game as possible. Just like you guys were saying, as far as books and things like that. I think it's really good to have discussion, and I call it kind of the working phase.
Right.
We're working to build a game. Okay, so we're building, and that's one of our hashtags with Mike Bay Golf is build your game. So we're building it up. So, at this point, we're going to probably start shorter shots, getting into longer shots, things like that. And that's part of, the program that I run where they come back for a coaching program. And, over and over again, teaching them different things about the game. And, that's important. It's important to be able to be committed as well. This is where, are we going to be committed? Or are we going to just take one lesson or two lessons and be done? Success and failure is a huge thing. I think taking them on the golf course and showing them success, like Pete was saying, was really important. I mean, it's terribly important to be able to show them that this game is fun, and that's what it's about. So, going out there and building it up like that, I typically like to start students out closer to the hole because we have a better chance of success at that and having more fun because it's kind of cool. And then we build our game around that. Still interviewing them, getting to know them more because you really don't know them much. You've only seen them once. It's important.
Right. And I think, too, and you both really have hit on this, is about the success part of it. Obviously, golf is going to have a mixed bag of and no pun intended, but successes and failures out on the golf course. And I like the approach that you both have talked about, and that is really starting in an area that's going to give them some successes, or certainly more apt to give them successes right away. For instance, getting them on the putting green, maybe starting with some short putts, getting them to work it into the hole, maybe some short chip shots, pitch shots, and things like that. Starting sort of what I would classify as an easier area to include in their strategy, if you will, to have some success. I think if you start them off on the other end of the game where you're hitting into the longer shots, as you talked about, Mike, initially it might be a little intimidating for some, especially for some of the newer golfers out there. And I think what the main thing that we want to do right from the get-go is giving them those opportunities to have some success right from the beginning, which is ultimately going to build their confidence. And once their confidence starts to build, they're going to want to move to the next stage. Do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
I think so. I mean, I would want more, right?
Sure.
During this stage too, as well, I'm evaluating the player to find out what kind of learner they are. How do they learn better? Some people learn better through visuals. Some people learn better through feelings. All those kinds of things. So, more time that we can spend with them, the better we can get as coaches, to help them faster. So it's. Yeah, confidence plays a big role in anything you learn, right? Once you get a little more confidence, you want to play more.
Right, and that really goes to what I'm getting at is I think that we want to do things, we want to create activities for our newer golfers, particularly, because I think this is one of the things, and Pete, I'm sure, as well as Mike, have seen this out there with a lot of our newer golfers, particularly. It looks difficult. It can be very difficult. And ultimately what ends up happening is if it's not approached or handled the right way, they tend to fall away, if you will, and not continue on with the journey because it just looks too difficult or it has become too difficult. And I think this is one of the problems with starting maybe necessarily with the full swing right off the get-go. It's not it's not something they're going to see an awful lot of success early on unless they happen to be very talented athletically to begin with. And as you pointed out, Pete, maybe played many other sports where they've had some successes and they have sort of a natural rhythm already built up where they're going to take advantage of that. All right, we're going to move into stage 3, and this is probably one of the toughest stages. Brian's sort of become aware of how you can execute some of these activities. Both Pete and Mike have demonstrated some of the things that they're going to do. So Brian sort of has gotten some good information from both of these guys to start things off. And now it's time when practice becomes extremely important. And as Brian starts to train his body and mind to work together in new ways to produce results that he wants, it's also a stage, as you just alluded to there, Mike, as well, for feedback, both positive and negative. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you on this one here. This is an area where we want to ingrain some good, solid fundamentals, but we also want to ingrain a good practice regimen, if you will, now that Brian has decided to take up the game and pursue a little bit further. So let's talk about stage 3 a little bit. We've now got them to bite the apple, if you will. How do we get Brian into a good regiment through some of the programs that you offer?
Yeah, part of the outside of golf is life, right? I mean, that's one of the things that is a big deal, is being able to make time for yourself. And I make a big deal about it with people. This is for you. This is for your enjoyment. So we have to make time to get better at anything. It's just like I related to when you were in school, you studied for the test and you got better and you got better and you got really good and you got good grades. So this is kind of like that, this phase. So being able to schedule time to be able to get out there and work on your game is so important. And then continually working on it over and over and over again. And that's a big deal, to be able to have that commitment level at this stage. Some people, a lot of times, they get to this stage and then they kind of fall off, right?
Right.
I also use this stage to figure out how can we get you better, right? What's going wrong with your game evaluation, things like that, and then we can just tackle those things to get you better. So.
Well, and as I point, well said, thank you. As I said, this is one of the toughest stages because the golfer, and again, in our example here, Brian is somebody that has gravitated to golf. He's seen it or watched it. Now he's participated a little bit. He's been out in the driving range a number of times. He's practiced a little bit, and he's sought a teach professional or golf coach, if you will, depending on the level he wants to get to help him. So, Pete, with lots of work and refinement, we're gonna get him comfortably into stage 3 and prepared to go to stage 4. He's starting to feel pretty good and about this new activity. And what are some other things? Is this a good time maybe to reinforce some of these techniques that we're teaching with some good drills? What about that? What about some good drills to help him? Go ahead.
No question. I develop for every one of my players, they have a workout routine, and it encompasses every part of the game. And they're given certain numbers of drills to do and repetitions and sets to do. So it's just like going to the gym. It's not a tough workout, but it gives them an opportunity in each area of the game to get some repetition and to do those things over and over again. And then also in those, for example, with putting and chipping, we build a game into it. So if you're going to go over there, you're going to do these routines, and then I want you to get 10 yards off the green. I want you to pick a pin and pars 3. So you got to get it up and in 3. And then once you move to pitching, we're going to back it up and we're going to do it again. So we're going to make not only the routine of the workouts that they're doing, given the repetition, but we're also going to put some games in there so they can see some of that success of how they're playing. And I always want them, when they're practicing, as often as possible, to play the shot all the way in. Now, obviously, when you're on the driving range, it's a little bit difficult. But when you're doing the short game, I want them to play it all the way through. So if you're going to chip it on, go putt it. If you're going to pitch it on, go putt it. So you're
Right.
always working at making that transition, and then they'll find, say, if I hit it closer to the hole, the putts aren't as hard. Yeah? You're
Right.
starting to figure that out, aren't you? Okay.
Right.
And so by playing those games, they can get some good, solid, fundamental repetition in there. And, there's all kinds of experts that tell you got to have a certain number of reps before something, becomes a habit or you can change a habit. But I think it's just getting them aware of, there is a little bit of practice involved, and you can see these things you have to do, but it's also a little bit of fun, too. We're going to have some fun while we're practicing. And so we're going to make these things, go all the way through. And I think when you do that and give them a clear sight of the different areas of the game that they practice, they can see how much time has to be spent in each area. Don't just, hit 50 drives and drive past the putting green and expect to putt well. You got to be out there practicing these things so that they become more routine for you and you get more used to and more comfortable. And I think that's going to lead them moving forward to gain, not only some confidence, but they're going to gain playing the game faster. They're going to get there quicker.
Right. Well said, both of you. Mike, I want to come back to you. We're going to stay on stage 3 for another few moments here, and I'm going to give each of you a chance to respond to this next. Now, obviously, as I worked through stage 1 and 2, we were talking about some of the new golfers coming out here, but the reality is there's a lot of golfers out there that have been playing for many, many years, 10, 20, 30 years and beyond, who are maybe in the stage 3 or have been in stage 3 where they're practicing, they're out there playing, working on their game, but they're still struggling. So now we've got this golfer. We're going to fast forward Brian a few years. He's now in his 40s, let's say, or approaching on 50. So Brian now comes to your facility. He's been playing golf for a while. He's no longer a newbie, but he's really struggling, and he's finding it really tough in this stage 3. This practicing, he's been out there practicing, doing all kinds of things to work on his game, and it's just not happening. How do we approach this individual a little bit differently in this stage of his learning? How do we retrain, if you will, or do we retrain? Mike, I'm going to start with you.
No, I think having the general knowledge of the game is so important. So you can't really retrain, but you can refocus. You can change the focus of what you're working on too. I think it's important, especially as you get older. We have to, I'm involved with TPI. I'm TPI certified, and being able to recognize limitations and things like that. That's terribly important at this age as well. So we do a lot of that with our players, especially our winter program, where we work on those kinds of things to get you better. There's a lot of different ways to get you better at this stage too. I mean, it's infinite in a lot of ways. It's this to me is the fun stage when we start getting players that have hit the wall. Well, what do I do?
Yeah.
And, for me, it's a lot of fun because now all of a sudden we get to show them something probably they've never seen before, which is neat.
Is this, let me just follow up on that because you raised an interesting thought there. And you're right, it is a fun stage for the coaches and teaching professionals out there. Does this golfer present more of a challenge who has been playing for a number of years and maybe has ingrained some bad habits? Does this present more of a challenge? And if so, how do you handle that?
I don't think it presents more of a challenge. I think through things that we use like technology and stuff like that. I mean, just showing someone that they're aiming 30 yards to the right all the time, and watch how much better they hit it. I mean, it's things like that at this stage that change everything around. And that's what I think is fun. Showing someone with things like we have gears and stuff like that, how much better they can hit the ball if they move a little bit better with their body or whatever it is. Showing someone that they're aiming way left or way right or their ball position is way too far back in their stance or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, the light bulb went on. If I can move my ball position farther forward, I can turn better. Whatever it is. They recognize that because they have such more knowledge of the game than the younger Brian, like you were talking about. They can fix it faster. That's the fun part.
Yeah, well said. Pete, what about you? You know, we've got a little more seasoned golfer in age, and they've been out there, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to make it sound like they're a senior quite yet, but they're getting, you know, they're up there. They're not quite to my age yet, so I can't believe I'm getting close. But anyways, but you know, they've been playing for a little while. They've had some struggles along the way, some challenges, as Mike just alluded to. Is this, you know, how do you handle a golfer in this stage 3, with the practice, with the drills and things like that maybe has had, you know, been self-taught and just not taught the right fundamentals, or maybe he's been watching too many of his buddies play who have never had a golf lesson either. How do we approach this individual in your sense?
Well, it goes back again to an interview process. So even though we had the initial one, I'm going to interview them again, and I'm going to ask them, you know, what things do you do well and what things do you do poorly? What part of your game do you think is giving you the most trouble? And then we start working into looking at the individual swing and saying, okay, now do you understand when you hit your shots, what you're doing, why the ball does what it does, and what you're doing to cause it? So we go into cause and effect. Do you understand the relationship between the club and the ball? What's happening here? And what is causing you to hit these shots? And just start going over some of the basic fundamentals of impact again to get them to understand what's going on. And, you know, that's something that you can never lose sight of. John Jacobs told me the last time I saw him, I said, if there's one thing I could remember from all the time I spent with you, what would it be? And he said, never lose sight of what the ball's telling you. And it's a great thing to do, because the ball's always going to tell you what's happening. It's going to give you a great understanding of what you're doing. And if you can get them to understand for them why the ball does what it does, what impact is causing it to happen, but how to fix it, that's the key. Now they have an understanding of, oh, now I know why I did that, and now I can correct it. There's nothing more satisfying for me than standing on the tee and somebody hits a shot and they miss it, and I'll ask them, okay, what happened? And they just spit back to me exactly what happened and what they need to do to fix it. And then they hit the next one correct. I mean, that's really what we should be giving them.
Right, exactly. And I think the other thing, guys, too, is you know, in addition to a commitment to us, you know, to be willing to allow us to step in there and work with them on whatever capacity or level they're comfortable with. But I think we also have to be willing and not afraid to ask for a commitment from the golfer that we're working with. And what I mean by that is you know, I don't want to sound like, well, you know, you've got to sign up for 5 or 10 lessons or else I'm not working with you. But I think what we need to do is they have to be willing to put a reasonable effort in to their own improvement. In other words, they can't just, it's kind of like this, you know, you can't just turn on something or watch something or expect somebody else to do something if you're not willing to do your part. And I think we've all experienced this from time to time, probably more often than not. Where we'll work with somebody, you know, give them a number of lessons, teach them the basics and work with their game, take them out in the golf course, only to find out that between lesson today and maybe 2 weeks down the road when they're coming back for their next lesson, they've done absolutely nothing. Mike, how do we encourage them and how do we get that commitment from them? Is this something, again, that we decipher through the interview process, or is this something that we do along the way by giving them those successes and making them want to get out there and work harder at their own game because they've seen some success through the trial and errors that we've helped them with? Mike?
I think you kind of have to do it both ways, Ted. You know, to you know, getting golfers to commit to getting better. I mean, really, it's just for them, right? And,
sure.
And like Pete was saying, you know, giving them enough knowledge to teach themselves is so important. That's how they get better. It's how you get better at anything when you have enough knowledge, right? So spending that time and putting in the work, you know, like I was saying earlier, you know, I help people try and make a schedule in their busy lives, schedule time. And that's what I do with them. And I make that commitment to them as well.
Right.
This is my time too, you know. It's not just, you know, them making that commitment. So it goes both ways between the coach and the students. Yeah,
and that's a great point. I mean, you know, it is a commitment on both sides. I think some of the frustration that I've seen, and I'm sure both of you seen, and Pete, you can certainly allude to this as well, is the lack sometimes of commitment by the student. And obviously we understand with the other activities and other issues that they may be faced with in their personal lives that are drawing their attention. Obviously, they may be in a committed relationship or what have you, or family obligations can take them away sometimes. But we still need to find. So what are some things that we can do, do you think, that we can encourage people? This is a sort of bone of contention. Let me just stop you for before you start here, Pete. One of the things I want to say this. I think there's been a lot of discussion over the last several years about handicaps, how and what we should do to change it, because maybe it's too hard and this is why they're not going down. But I think the truth is, and I think people have to be honest, I think we can only do as much as we can on our side. We're, with technology and all of these great, wonderful tools that we've been given and the knowledge that we've been given. But the consumers have to also be willing to engage and make time, as Mike just discussed. So what can we do to what are things that we can do maybe differently than we're doing right now, if anything, to get these people out there and making a better commitment, not just with their financial side of things, but and taking lessons, but committing their time?
Well, one of the things I like to do with them is I'll say, okay, let's fast forward a year from now. And you've had a great, successful year at golf. I said, where are you? How are you playing? What's your handicap? What position are you in a year from now? So tell me what that looks like. And they'll give it to me. I said, now let's back up. How do you suppose we get there? What are the things we need to do between now and then so that we can create that picture and get you to that goal of what you've seen a year from now? And so we start to look at it and start to say, okay, if we're going to get there, we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. And this is going to take this amount of time. So
right.
What time do you have to commit to it? So do you have an hour a week to hit some balls in practice? Do you have 2 hours? So we start to look at it from a fast forward going backwards so they can kind of see, I'd really like to be here. This is what I want to do. And then we come back and all right, well, here's what you're going to have to do to get there. And I think it helps them to realize that, number one, it's possible. I can get there. And number two, what I have to do to make that happen. So then they can say, well, I'd really like to play that way. And, I can commit that much time. I can make it work. And then if they don't have as much time, so now, if you're only going to be able to do a little bit of time, we got to make sure that we're laser focused on the time we have and we're doing the right things. So let's practice the right things when you're out there to get you there faster. So I think, that's really worked for me. I think they really enjoy it, and they sort of get to plan out their next year for what they're going to do. And, it's also fun, too, because we track it along. And as they start hitting those different spots, they said, how'd you know I'd get there? I said, well, no, you're the one who got there. You said it. It's your deal. I just sort of steered you in the right direction. I put you in the car and I gave you a roadmap. Right,
exactly. And obviously, I'm going to move to stage 4 now. This is where really all golfers want to be. It's referred to as the unconscious competence. But let me just very quickly recap the other 3. Stage 1, of course, is for our new golfers, particularly. Actually, the first 2 stages are. Stage 1 is the unconscious incompetence. That's when you first sort of have been exposed to a new activity, in this case, golf, and you've decided that looks like something you'd like to give a try, but you obviously come to the realization that it's not always easy and requires a little more effort. Stage 2, of course, is the conscious incompetence, that you're now aware of the difficulties and challenges that you might be facing, but are still apt to want to be able to get out there and give it a go. And now you're ready to start to make a commitment in researching and looking, connecting with the great professionals like Mike and Pete on the show tonight. So that's the stage 2. Stage 3, you've made your connections, you've gone through your interview processes, and you've had some discussions as to what some of your short and long-term goals with golf are. And now you, Mike and Pete, or whoever you happen to be working with, have sort of put a game plan together on how to achieve some of those goals. But stage 4 is where you've reached a point now. You've been playing for a while. Stage 3 is very satisfying for you. Of course, you're able to go out and do some of the things that you've been working on, but it also is very tiring. And you want to be able to just go out there, and we've talked about this many times in the shows. You've been working on your game, doing that, but instead right now you just want to get out there and enjoy it. And these people are those that they're truly good at the activity. They spend most of their time in the stage 4, sort of a euphoria, if you will, and that's what we refer to as the unconsciously competent stage. And this is especially true for those golfers that are competing, whether it's in a golf tournament or some sort of other event. And this is the sort of the ultimate stage when it comes to learning. Your concentration levels are very high. You're able to do things. And I'm going to give you a quick example here, and then Pete, I'm going to go back to you, and then Mike. You're not really thinking about, most often when you're in stage 3, you're thinking about focusing on the target and selection of the proper club. But when you reach to stage 4, you don't have to think through the mechanics of the swing. You're thinking about these other things, but not so much the mechanics on how to produce the shot. They sort of are coming more naturally to this stage. So what are things that we can do to help people move from stage 3 to get to this stage 4? We want them to have fun, of course, but we want them to be able to not be thinking or overthinking. And this has become a big problem for a lot of people, especially people stuck in that transition. So, Pete, let's start with you.
Well, one of the things I like to do is when I get them out on the range, we'll play a bunch of games with the types of shots they're going to hit. And I'm just going to say, okay, we're going to aim left of the 150 pole. I want you to fade a 5-iron in. I want you to draw one in. And just get them to start hitting shots without doing anything but just looking at the shot and hitting it. So they're not worried about what's going on from a mechanical standpoint. They're just messing around hitting shots. And I think it helps them to realize that, I can do this, pretty easy here. And we all know under the gun it gets a little bit more difficult, but you got to be able to do it in that kind of stage and make it some fun for things to do. I like to take them around the green, and when we're hitting shots around the green, I'll challenge them and say, I don't want you to pick this ball up and toss it in there, and just get them to start doing motions where they're really not thinking, they're just doing it. And, and then take the wedge or a 9 or an 8 and say, do the same thing. Come on, just toss it in there. But trying to get them to just play shots and not worry about anything else but playing the shots, and just take it and hit those. So I think it helps them to bridge that stage, if you will, from, trying to think about it all the time. And one of the things I always tell them when they're going through all the drills that I'm giving them, they're doing all the exercises and they're complaining because they're having to do them. I said, you know what, what this is doing is, I said, when you go play golf, I want you to be brain dead when you play golf.
Right.
I want you to just play. By going through all of these stages of the workouts, it's creating that atmosphere for you so that you're just doing routine after routine, shot after shot after shot after shot. And before too long, you're just making shots. You're not worrying about it anymore. So that's what I mean by taking I call it their final stages. They play brain dead. And the next thing they know, they come in and they shot one of the best scores they ever did, and they can't remember a thing of what they did on the golf course, of how they did it. They just did it. So that's kind of the way I like to run that.
Right, exactly. Mike, the Brian's now elevated in his game somewhat. He's now coming to you as you're now his coach, so you're going to be more involved in his weekly ritual, if you will. We've often heard it on the tour. They talk about players being in the zone. They've gotten to the point where they're not really thinking much about, as I said earlier, technique or mechanics. They're just coming to play the game in that sort of unconsciously competent stage as professionals. But even the best of them still have a swing coach or something. So Brian's now come to you at this stage, and now you want to work on implementing some improvements or eliminating flaws that may be still lingering around. So let's walk through this stage with you, Mike, if you will, with Brian, who's now come to you for a little bit more of a commitment as a swing coach. What are some things that you're going to work on here and help him to maintain that high level?
Yeah, now he's probably playing in golf tournaments, right? So it's, starting to play in some golf tournaments. It's now all of a sudden we're measuring ourselves against other players, and also ourselves. So, I kind of have this thing with these guys that I'm working with, is that the studying happens out here at the Learning Center, and the test is on the golf course. And whatever game you have to bring it with you out on the golf course. So all the work is done here. So when we get on the golf course, we're worried about things that we can control, which is our mind, what we're thinking about, pre-shot routine, what club we're going to hit, worried about where the wind is coming from so we can hit a good shot. All these different things, playing the game, and not so much about where my club is in my backswing. Am I doing this drill correctly? Am I doing this, doing that? All that kind of stuff. So playing and practicing, for me, I try and separate as far apart as possible so that we can play the game better. It's so important to do that. Then what do you learn at this stage, right? What did you learn when you hit the wrong club from 150 yards over the green? What did you learn, about yourself? Well, I learned that, out of this lie, it jumped on me out of the rough or whatever, that kind of stuff. How do we get ourselves better through not just, scoring better, but shot by shot? What are we doing to make ourselves better so we can shoot the lowest scores we can? Even if they're playing in tournaments, even a higher handicapper, let's say we hit a bad shot. How do we accept that? How do we accept that it's a bad shot? What are we going to do with it when we go find it? How are we going to recover from it? Sometimes par is a 5 or a 6. That's our par for that hole because that's the way it is. If we get lucky, we might make a 5 or a 4, So understanding that, making scorecards for that, and it's just like, making scorecards for the kids. A lot of times with little ones, we're playing from the 100-yard marker or the 150-yard marker, and that's their par. That way we don't get pooped. We can play, right?
Right.
And it's like that with everyone. So being able to do that as a coach is so important to their success, them wanting to get better and continue to come back and play more golf. It's it's in our hands as coaches to want that, for our students.
Well, and I think the key word that we've all said, throughout our careers is we want our students to have fun. And if it gets to a point where they're no longer having fun, and I think this is what's really caused a good number of people over the last several years to sort of drift away or fall away from the game because it's become too challenging. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind as professionals and as golfers out there, I think that you have to remember that the stage 3 and 4 are always going to work hand in hand. And I'll give you an example. When you're in tournament play, you want to be at stage 4. You don't want to be thinking about mechanics. You don't want to be thinking about any issues that you might have. You want to be in the moment. You want to get yourself into the zone, as they say. But in a situation where there is work to be done, then you're going to revert back to stage 3. This is the practice phase, if you will. You're going to work on for instance, Tiger, I'll use him as an example, over the course of his career has made a number of swing changes with different coaches. I can assure you that he was not in stage 4 during that process. When he was in the tournament, he was in stage 4, but when he was in the moment of making swing changes or adjustments or removing elements of the swing that he felt was not in his wheelhouse at that particular moment, he would revert back to stage 3. So again, we need to educate, I think, the golfers a little bit, and this was the purpose for this segment tonight, is to help people understand where they're at in their golf games and where they want to sort of strive to. It's not just about hitting, making solid contact all the time. I mean, obviously that's a good goal to have as well, but it's not always realistic. So in some closing thoughts, guys, Pete, again, I'll start with you. Let's talk about where we need to start with our golfers when they're first coming up to us, and how we transition them to that stage 4.
Well, I think there's been a lot of great things talked about tonight, for starting them off. And to me, scoring is one of the things that is premier in golf. So you got to start them off with obviously some things they can do, some success, And I think when you get them started with putting and chipping and pitching, keeping them around the green, as Mike said, and getting them sufficient with those types of shots is a great way for them to start. And, you know, they get some success. They can see some of the putts going in, some of the chips getting close, maybe some of them going in. But get them proficient around the green so they've got some contact. They're starting to get the ball up in the air. They're starting to make some little swings, and then begin to bring them backwards from there and moving them into some pitch shots that go a little bit longer, and then starting to talk about the full swing and how it works and what is necessary. I think one of the things I learned a long time ago that I've tried to give to everybody is, you know, every situation you get into, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do here? My ball's sitting here. It's in a little bit of grass. The pin's over there. What are we trying to do? The ball's sitting on a tee. There's a fairway out there. What are we trying to do? So if you can understand what we're trying to do first, what the relationship between the club and the ball is going to be next, and then from there, how do we achieve it? That way there's always a pattern to work through that they can see. There's always a pattern to move. And, you know, as you were saying there towards the end, you know, sometimes there are going to be shots in certain situations that you can't do. So you got to understand your limitations a little bit. You know, yeah, we'd all like to be able to pull some shots off, but, you know, at this stage of the game, that's not it. You know, if you're starting off new, maybe you go off to the course and you start from the 150-yard marker. Start there. Play your way in so you get used to being out there. Because I think one of the things early on that's really can hurt golfers from coming back is they play too long of a course. It takes them too long. People are getting upset. It's taking too long to play. You know, and it really puts them in a bad situation. So I think getting them to understand the proficiency around the greens first and then backing them up so they can play, I think that will always help them to not only get themselves around the golf course, but I think they'll see success early. There'll be more confidence in what they're doing, and I think it just teaches them how to play the game a little bit quicker.
Right, and you know, something that my father did when I was a younger lad, much younger, of course, he took me to what they refer to as an executive course, or now you might refer to it as a par 3 course, when he was first taking me out, because he knew, obviously at that particular time, my skill level wasn't, you know, at its best. It was in sort of the stage 1, stage 2 area of my life, and I knew, you know, that going out to, or rather he knew that going out to a longer course or a, you know, taking me to the country club, so to speak, was going to be overwhelming for me at that stage, because it was, you know, I wasn't going to be able to hit it far enough to really capitalize on anything. So he took me, much like what you're suggesting, Pete, and Mike, you talked about as well. So and he took me to this particular course to, you know, instill some confidence that he knew I'd be able to reach many of these par 3s, certainly not all of them, but many of these par 3s. And the ones that I didn't, I could certainly get to them in 2 shots. And it was certainly rewarding. And instead of playing as a par 3, we played it as a par 4 course. Again, so it was a learning process for me. Mike, what about yourself? Obviously, again, you want to take from stage 1 and get them to stage 4. Some quick thoughts on what we need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, every person is different. You know, some of them advance a lot quicker than others do.
Sure.
We have to be, you know, cognizant of that. That's important. Taking them through those just like that, like you guys were saying, and playing a golf course that they can handle, playing golf the way that they can handle it is really important too. We all know, you said it tonight, Ted, you know, the goal is fun. What's going to be fun for them? Yep. So we got to think about that, you know, as we start learning and building our game. That has to be at the forefront. Otherwise, you lose them. You know, you really do.
Yeah, and I think you have to, you know, guys. I think you have to, number one and first and foremost, is you have to assess very early on what their limitations are. And sometimes, you know, I heard one of you, and I think it was Pete, that made a comment about, you know, asking them, you know, what areas that they're struggling with, and that sometimes a lot of golfers, to be honest, really don't know. They don't really know where their weak areas are. And, you know, they might think they do, but a lot of times they even have difficulties really, you know, assessing what areas they need the most work. Sometimes it might be something completely different than what they first imagined. And a quick fix over here might be the solution as opposed to reworking something over here. So again, I think getting a proper assessment in the interview process, understanding, taking them out in the range and getting a true assessment of their limitations, and then getting them out in the golf course as well and seeing where their fears lie. Are they afraid of being in the bunker? Or are they afraid, chipping these little chip shots, delicate shots around the green? Is it the first tee jitters that many golfers suffer from? So learning some of these key areas that a golfer suffers from and where they really need the most help with, I think is very early to assess their limitations right from the get-go, because then it helps you build a platform to be able to move them through these different stages we talked about tonight. Mike, I'm going to go back to you for a quick second here. We've only got a few moments left. Where can the listeners reach out if they want to get in touch with you? What are some ways that they can reach out and learn more about Mike Fay?
Absolutely. You can visit my website at mikefeygolf.com. On there are 4 writers that write for the website all about different things like golf fitness and the mental game and golf instruction and stuff like that, and the rules of golf too. We do a lot of videos and articles on that with Frank Costella. Then you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all at Mike Fay Golf. We also run the Ask the Pro show on Sunday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern time on Twitter. So get involved, follow the hashtag Ask the Pro, and learn some stuff. I've certainly learned a lot of stuff over the last 5-6 years we've been doing it. It's fantastic. Very good.
And that's definitely some very sound advice. So for you listening out there, you definitely want to follow Mike and the gang on Ask the Pro on Twitter. Great show. I've tuned in a few times, and it's very well worth it. Pete, what about you as well? How can the folks reach out to you?
They can get me at plainsimplegolf.com. That's PLANE for the plainsimplegolf.com. All the information's out there on the website. We're gearing up for a big 2017. I've been doing more and more online instruction, so you'll see the website sort of gearing towards that. I've got, probably, I don't know how many countries now, but I get, it almost seems like daily, I've got players from all over the world contacting me about getting some help. So we're sort of gearing in that direction. The technology today makes it easy to do. Yep. And so we're going down that road with it. And so, anybody, anywhere, any place, anytime, can always get a hold of me. And if they have a question, I'll be happy to answer it and help them along the road with anything that I can. So that's how they can get in touch.
Perfect. As always, guys, I want to thank you very much for giving of your time on my show tonight, Golf Talk Live, and particularly on the Coach's Corner panel. Great discussion tonight, guys, and it actually works. The discussion tonight actually works very well with my next guest, because we're going to be talking about with Peter Willis, who's going to be joining me here in just a few moments. We're going to talk about people and relationship building tips for growing your business. And I think one of the things that we kind of touched on without really spilling the beans too much is really about developing relationship between the instructor and the students out there. And it's not just a matter of taking golf lessons, but it's about really understanding and listening to the individuals that we're working with and understanding what their needs and what their goals and desires are, and then being able to help them implement it through our teaching abilities and so forth. So, guys, a great job tonight as always. Thank you very much, and I look forward to having you guys back on the Coach's Corner.
Thanks a lot, Ted. It's always a pleasure to be on. Thanks for what you do.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ted.
All right. Take care, Mike. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. See you.
Bye. Okay, that was my very special guests, Pete Buchanan and Mike Fay, here on the Coach's Corner panel on Golf Talk Live. And as I mentioned, we're going to transition into the second half of the show with my very special guest, Mr. Peter Willis. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Peter before he comes out. For those of you that didn't tune in last week, of course, was the first part of a 2-part series. Last week was 7 tips to grow your golf business, and we talked about some different things. We're going to recap that here in a moment or two. But tonight is the second half of that 2-part series, and we're going to talk, as I just alluded to, we're going to talk about in part 2, people and relationship building tips for your business. So part 1, if you didn't get that, go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live after the show. and listen to part 1 of the series, which was 7 tips to grow your golf business. And of course, you're listening live, so you can listen to part 2, which is people and relationship building tips for your business. We're going to talk about building those relationships and why they're important, and we're going to, of course, tie it all in with the golf industry and that as well. But let me just tell you a little bit about my guest coming on here. As I said, he was on last week, but for those of you that didn't maybe hear the program, Peter Willis, of course, is the president and founder of the Willis organization. And Peter works with business owners and businesses in the golf industry to help them improve their overall sales performance. His mission is to support and help individuals and teams achieve their personal and business goals and grow the game at the same time, and he's done that very well. He achieves this mission as president and founder, as I said, of the company, of the Willis organization. And over the past 25 years, Peter has worked with a wide range of clients, entrepreneurial businesses, startups, individuals, and larger companies. Here's a few just to name: Konica Minolta, Shell Oil, Motorola, Philips, Sharp, and Herman Miller. But before establishing the Willis organization, he had a varied career. He began his selling career in public education, but quickly moved to the corporate world, first with Xerox and then with Lanier, and then he moved on to Price Waterhouse Coopers. There he held a number of sales and operational management, marketing and training positions, gaining all the experience that he needed to be able to strike out in his own business. Because Peter believes so strongly that increasing sales is key to business growth and improved performance, he and his team at the Willis organization recently created and introduced a new online product, Go for the Green Selling Challenge, which we're going to tie that in a little bit later in the show as well. And it links the fun of golf to selling in a whole new way. With the challenge, users learn to improve their selling skills in practice and then head off to play and test their selling skills on a virtual golf course. So without any further ado, let me welcome back for week 2 on Golf Talk Live, my very special guest, Peter Willis. Peter, welcome.
Thanks so much, Ted. Great to be back with you, and thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Well, I appreciate it, Peter, and as we've talked about many times leading up to this series, these are areas that I think are very important, and we're going to recap a little bit of last week for those that didn't get a tune-in. But again, for those of you that didn't get a chance to hear last week, I definitely want you to go back. Don't do it now, of course. We want you to stay tuned for this part, but listen to it at your convenience. All the shows, of course, are auto-recorded, so you can go back and listen to it when it's convenient. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and just scroll down to the on-demand section, and you'll see the recorded version of last week's show, as you will for this show as well a little bit later. But let me just let's give a quick recap, Peter, if we can, of last week's show. Why don't you just run through very quickly some of the discussion that we had last week?
Great, love to. First of all, I want to comment on Coach's Corner. I really enjoy that segment of the show, and I always come away with some great tips. Tonight's learning tips were fabulous, and I'd be short selling if I didn't acknowledge that, Ted. Those guys really do a great job. I'm really in great company with Pete and Mike tonight.
They do a great job.
Oh, they sure do. On last week's show, you'll recall we introduced the 7 tips for increasing sales to grow our businesses. And during that, as you'll recall, and your audience will recall, Ted, we talked about how to prepare and plan, then make sure that we had our goals in place. We also talked about asking the right questions, listening and learning, then selling the benefits of our business, and then getting a commitment to action. So as you said, tonight we're going to build on those tips and connect them into tips for selling people and business and building relationships in our businesses. And the tips will work for anyone wanting to take their business to the next level, whether that's in or outside golf.
Right.
So I want to have a chance to make a few comments about people. And I know in the Coach's Corner segment we spent a lot of time talking about relationships with people. And actually, Pete and Mike did me a big favor to set me up a little bit there, which I really appreciate. So, but really, in terms of people, when we do business in the golf industry, we really all know how important the people component is to growing our businesses. And that's really because the golf world, as you and I know, Ted, is so deeply personal. People buy from people in every business, and I've always found that when we put people first, selling is a whole lot more interesting and a whole lot more fun, which you were talking about in Coach's Corner as well.
Right.
People's personalities, I find this, and I know you do too, probably in your selling efforts. People's personalities, their behaviors, their actions and reactions really serve to test our knowledge and our skills. And working with people keeps us excited about what we do in our business. And let's be honest, that excitement gets shared with customers and gets shared with people that we're trying to sell. And really, excitement about a business idea probably is, and I know it's the case in my situation, why most of us got into businesses in our first place.
Right.
So to put people first when we're selling, we'll want to get to know our customers as people on their terms, so we can engage them personally and do this before selling the value of our products and services. And the obvious result is when we do that, buying decisions and business growth happen.
Right, exactly.
Go ahead, Ted, sorry.
Well, what I was gonna very quickly add to that is there's a reason why, building these relationships first is so crucial. I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make in sales in general is they come out with the product and they're sort of pushing their products or services very quickly without really getting a chance, as we talked about, as you pointed in the Coach's Corner. I think it's important for the coaches to really understand and qualify the individual that's sitting across from them and understand what their needs, wants, and desires be as far as learning how to play the game. And I think if they, and as I said, when we talked about the stage one golfer who's maybe had a little bit of exposure out there, if they're suddenly, grappled or overwhelmed with signing up for a bunch of lessons before they've really had an idea of what they're getting themselves into, I think can be very overwhelming. And I think this is why it's important for businesses, and particularly in the golf industry, why building these personal relationships are extremely important. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why that's not happening in today's business world. Go ahead.
Right. No problem. Let's move on to the tips about selling people. The tips we're going to talk about tonight, as you know from last week's show, those of you who tuned in, are quick, they're easy to understand, and they work no matter what our business is or where we do business and whether we're selling in a face-to-face way or virtually.
Right.
The tips, as you and I discussed, Ted, aren't new, but they're great reminders. And the tips we're going to talk about tonight are all about why people buy, who they want to buy from, and how they want to be treated when they do buy. And I think those are all key elements of what we're going to talk about. So we'll maybe move on to tip one, and I know you and I are going to get back and forth on a lot of these because I know you've got some very strong beliefs on some of these tips because we've talked about them before. Tip number one, people buy from people who care about what they do and who are knowledgeable, and here we go again, and excited about what they're selling.
Right.
And I really think that caring about what you do, having that knowledge of what you're selling, whether it's a product, a service, and building that with excitement is a great way to start.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you have to sort of put yourself, and we're going to talk about this, so I don't want to jump ahead, but you have to sort of put yourself in the customer's shoes for a little bit in your approach, and again, we'll talk about that when that comes up in the next part of the tip. But I want to just sort of emphasize this again, what I was talking about earlier in Coach's Corner. I think what's happened, and we've talked about this off air actually. One of the things that I've noticed in certain areas of the golf industry, particularly with some of the golf courses out there, and this could be part of the reason why some of them have not seen the revenue flow that they would like, is they've got this sort of open door policy where they open the doors in the morning, fling them open, and wait for customers to come to them. And they're not really engaging with the community. They're not out there, engaging with the local community. And it's not just about, again, slashing prices or discounting prices on the golf course. That has its place as well, giving discounted tee time. But if you're constantly doing that and you're not engaging with your customers, eventually they're going to move on. They're not going to feel very welcome. So yeah, you want to be engaging with your customers, and you want to get to know them a little bit and find out what their aspirations are, and talk to them. Have a conversation with them. It doesn't always have to be about golf, but you want to have a conversation, get to know the individuals, and you want to obviously be excitable to a point where they see that you're enjoying what you're doing. You're not just waiting for them to book their tee time. And that's certainly a big understanding, and understanding them and their needs. What are their needs? They want to obviously get out and have enjoyment at your facility, or they want to, maybe in the case of a coach or teacher professional, they want to learn to play the game better. So we need to understand what their desires and goals are in our discussion. So that's important. Go ahead, continue.
Let's move on to tip 2. People buy from people, especially people who make themselves easy to buy from. We all know there's a huge emphasis out there today on technology and process that are designed to make us easy to buy from. There's CRM, there's data, analytics, and lots of software and apps. And I'm not certainly putting any of these down. They can be useful and they can be practical in building our businesses. However, a slight word of caution. Sometimes all this technology can get in the way and come between us and our customers. And it's important that we work to solve this. And by way of solving it, I think we probably need to make some choices and focus only on those tech tools that are most useful to selling our customers and growing our particular business. And then forget about the rest. Because after all, technology and process really don't sell our products or services. We do. Right.
And that, that's a great point. And I knew that we were going to get into this about technology. And again, there's 2 areas that I want to talk about real quickly here, and then we'll continue on. In the case of golf instruction, technology is a great tool. It's one that any and every instructor needs to have in their repertoire to help their students. But they can't rely solely on those tools. They also have to have that interpersonal relationship, because one of the dangers in the case of teaching is that if they rely solely on the tools and there's no sort of personal interaction, it's all based on hooking you up to monitors and so forth all the time. What ultimately ends up happening is there becomes a disconnect. People don't feel valued, much like in the case of selling. There's lots of great tools. I'm not going to lie and say I haven't gone on and bought something through Amazon.com. It's a great place to get something, but I still want to go and interact with somebody and learn about the product. I mean, I can certainly research it, and there's lots of great ways of doing that, and that's one of the wonderful things about technology. You can do your own research, but I still want to know from somebody, their experience, what it was like when they used that particular product. Did they get enjoyment out of it, and how it worked for them? And obviously in the golf business, I don't want to go and if I was taking a lesson, I don't want to just sign up for a lesson online without really getting to know the instructor a little bit. What their personality's like. Are we going to click? Are we going to mesh? Or are we going to be like gears grinding? So technology certainly has a place in the use, but as you said, there are some cautions that we have to be aware of. Maybe let's point out a couple of other cautions or uses, if you will, about technology that we need to be guarded for. Well, I think the real thing here is that we've got to take a look at it and really analyze what works best for our business. And there's so many choices. We've really got to think this thing through. Which tools are going to look after some of the processes that we've identified that are maybe slowing down our business or not giving our business the focus that it really needs? And those are the ones we're going to embrace. And it's an ongoing situation, as you and I both know, Ted. There is so much technology coming on stream almost weekly or daily that we really have to take a strong, long look, stand back, and make specific judgments as to the ones that are really going to improve all of the elements of our business. And as I said earlier, we got to look at our business is such that it has its own unique characteristics and its own unique qualities.
So let's fit out of this big barrel of technology, let's fit the ones that work best in our business, and most importantly, work best for our customers.
Right. And I think the other thing too that and I know this is kind of moving down the food chain here, but one of the other things I think that why it's important to have personal interaction with people, and I'm going to use it in the case of a golf course and instructors. I'm going to take it from that standpoint, if you will, just to keep the golf theme in here. Is as an instructor, people have to obviously first and foremost they have to like me. They have to have a personal connection with me, but they also have to respect and trust what it is that I do. Not just hey, I'm a golf professional. They need to be able to feel confident that one, I know what I'm talking about, and that I'm going to be able to help them with their problem, whatever that might be. And I need to be, as we talked about last week, one of the things I need to be able to do is I need to be a good listener. I need to be able to listen to their concerns and difficulties or struggles they may be having out in the golf course. So as a golf professional, that's one way. What about now you've worked with a lot of golf courses. What are some of the things that you've experienced in dealing with golf courses that maybe they need to focus on when it comes to people?
Well, I think that courses really have to work to understand people and what it is that they're needing and wanting of the course. And in order to do that, we really got to, once again, think our way through this and take a long look about the customer profile that our course is targeting. Let's really understand so that we can put together the plans, the strategies, what works for our following at our course. What are their needs? What are the profile needs? What are the requirements? What are some of the attitudes we're sensing, we're hearing at the course? What are some of the likes that they have? What are some of the dislikes they have? And then once we've done that, we can kind of put that together as a meaningful target profile for our customers at the course. And I think that is really important. You touched on it earlier, Ted, and you're absolutely right. We need to really understand the folks that we're serving. And most importantly, we need to understand what their needs and requirements are. And that way, once we have those, we can be a whole lot more effective. There's a lot of tools out there, again, that can help us with that. There's a lot of social media channels, and LinkedIn can be great first steps in understanding our customer better and understanding their needs. And then it comes down to what you said earlier, and it's the personal contact that really has to be there. Whether it's a tech program, whether it's a software program, we need, and our customers need, that personal contact. Because let's be honest, there's nothing more personal than golf. And so that whether we're connecting with these people and trying to understand them better in a face-to-face at the course, whether it's an email, phone, or text, we still have to work to really understand them better. And I think there's a big payoff here when we do, because when we take the time to learn as much as we can about our customers, and really what they want and what they're looking for from us, we'll get their buying commitments a whole lot faster. And equally important, we're going to build our businesses faster because we've taken the time to really understand them, really understand their needs, do the hard work that's necessary to put together programs and put together policies and strategies that are really going to be winning ones by listening, as you said earlier, by listening to the needs of the folks we're serving.
Right. I want to, excuse me, I want to bring in just a couple of points that I know are in line here that I think that need to really be focused on. The first one is we need to make sure that we make them feel important. And we also need to provide them with a memorable buying experience. And I'll give you a good example. One of the things that I've noticed, and this certainly transcends with many businesses, but even within the golf industry, is that people need to feel that they're unique to a point. And what I mean by that is many courses for a long time were shuffling people through in order to get as many people through as possible to play rounds of golf, much like cattle. In other words, they were just another number, and the problem is they weren't getting a memorable experience for their money. Now, obviously, they're trying to be mindful of slow play, and they've got to keep people moving in that. But there seemed to be a rush to a point where people were constantly, you had, I mean, I say this jokingly, but it's true. Quite often you would see the marshal sitting in the golf cart in the background waiting for you to hit your shot. And for a lot of amateurs out there, that's a very intimidating, for maybe a golf professional that's played for a long time and understands, a pair of eyes watching them, it's not a big deal. But for some of these amateurs out there, and it goes to the point, again, as a customer, you want to be made to feel important. You want to feel that my $45 or my $60 or $75, whatever it happens to be for the green fee, is just as important as the next guy's. And if they're feeling like they're rushed or that they're not being treated with a certain amount of respect or courtesy, they're not going to have a memorable buying experience, and they're not likely going to come back to that golf course. So, that's something that I think courses and business owners of golf facilities need to be mindful of is, yes, we want to be able to increase sales and that, but there are other ways of increasing that revenue without compromising the customer's enjoyment.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that in terms of making folks feel important and special, that really follows from understanding them better. And those two really, really fit together. They making the customer feel important really does follow from understanding them and really getting to know them as people. I go back to, we talked a lot about that in the Coach's Corner tonight, this personal approach, making sure that things we do are individualized because people want to feel that they are special. We all want to feel that way. When we go out to do business with people, we want them to make us feel special. And if they do, we're going to return and we're going to come back again. And I've seen this many, many times in my own experience where I've dealt with a supplier who was wise enough in the way he or she approached me. They were wise enough to, first of all, understand me as a person, then understand what it really was that I wanted or needed from them. And boy, they delivered it, and they delivered it quickly, and you came away from that situation, as you said, feeling that you'd really had a positive and a memorable buying experience. And it was all because they did the first two so well, understanding the needs and then making me feel important and special. So you're absolutely right. Those things are very, very important. And I think the other point where you were talking about the intimidation factor with being crowded on the course and too many eyeballs on you when you're not quite comfortable with your game yet. That's the fastest way to create the other side of making people feel like they are freight being moved through a track or being moved through a railroad car or something of that nature. These things are really, really important. And when we come talking about people, the golf environment really drives home this need for understanding people well and then providing the personal touch and the personal approach to really make sure that they return and as you said, really enjoy the experience. What can be more memorable than playing a great round on a golf course that you love that has big challenge and is real quality? And those folks out there who are building their course businesses, as you and I both know, Ted, are the ones that make it memorable from the moment, as you said, from the moment you walk into the club. You can almost feel it, and you can almost feel the other side of it as well. We've both been in Category A and Category B, but I'm a big believer. When you walk in the door, you're called by name. You're feeling special. When you go to lunch, The bartender has whatever your drink is ready to go, calls you by name. He remembers what it is that you like. He probably, he and all of the other folks at the course are probably going to engage you, as you said earlier, in conversation. And
sure.
the ones that do this well will be chatting you up and recalling information from the last time you visited.
Right.
I really think that this is. I really think that making people important and special is so critical. And you've covered that very well, and also tied it together well with making sure that they're getting value and a positive and memorable buying experience. And we can really make that happen.
You know, one other thing, Peter, one other point I want to make with respect to technology, that I think that there is another danger. You know, obviously in this technological age, I mean, we need to have a presence in social media. I mean, we need to have a website. We need to have, you know, other ways of communicating. But I think one of the dangers that we have to be careful of is that we don't rely solely on that form of communication with our customers. It's really, for instance, in a website, you know, it's really meant to be a landing page and a place for information for people to get an understanding of what it is, whatever products or services that you have to offer. So in the case of a golf course, of course, you want to have a website present. You want people to see images of the golf course, say, hey, that looks like a great course. And obviously we're talking about non-private courses here for the moment, because obviously private courses, they're certainly going to have a website presence, but you know, that's going to be more in line with their members and that. But maybe some of the great resort courses out there, they want to have certainly a visual appeal. They want to be active in other social media, whether it be Facebook or Twitter, letting people know some of the great offers that they have. But as you said, when you step through that door of that great golf resort, wherever that happens to be, you want to make sure that the staff are engaging, that they're welcoming you into the facility, that they're telling you about some of the great things. And this is why, and I'm going to, again, jump ahead a little bit, down here talking about understanding people and building these relationships. This isn't just for the golf courses. This is for, and I was going to talk about this as well. For those of you out there that maybe don't necessarily work in the golf business, but maybe you have a business and you've thought about maybe getting out there and using golf as a business tool. Golf is a phenomenal, in fact, it is the key or prominent business tool in the world. There is none better out there than out in the golf course. And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's take this scenario for some of you entrepreneurs out there. Some of you may have already done it. Some of you may not have considered doing this. And it doesn't matter what your skill level is. You're going out there to have fun. You're going out there to engage people. If you think about your traditional sales call, Peter, you're lucky if you've got 15, 20 minutes to engage a prospective client or customer on an appointment. Depending on how it goes, you might get a little bit more, but initially an initial sales call. But if you invite a prospective client or customer out to the golf course to play a round of golf, you've now got a captive audience for the next 3 to 4 hours, depending on what length of time that you're going to play. You're never going to get a better opportunity, and that's why so many Fortune 500 companies virtually insist on their executives playing golf. It's not just out there to go out and have fun. I mean, obviously they want them to have fun, but it's a great way for them to engage their customers or potential customers out in the golf course. It's also a great way to reward repeat customers by inviting them to play. And one of the things that you can also do through golf as a startup entrepreneur is if you don't want to have 4 hours to kill, you can contact a local golf professional, work out a partnership with him or her, and do something like this. Encourage them to organize a golf clinic. So instead of just taking one or two customers out there, you can now take maybe 5 to 10 prospective customers, and I would suggest taking one that's currently a customer and doing business with you that can maybe talk about their business relationship with you. So that's a great sounding board as well. But take them out and let the golf professional maybe put together a 1 or 2 hour clinic, depending on what time frame you have. And you may even, depending on your business, may even want to foot the bill for that particular venture, because it's a great way to develop relationships. And there's guys out there certainly doing it, but there's a lot of guys out there that maybe haven't thought of doing this. And this is a great way to build a network and relationship with your customer and you're also, as I talked about earlier, Peter, you're reaching out to your community as a golf professional to some of your business folks out there, and encouraging them to bring some of their clients to the golf course.
Yeah, I was just to hitchhike on what you said, Ted. I was talking with a marketing consultant the other day, and he made a very, very key point that I think is worth bringing in here. He said, people are so fed up with being cooped up in offices. If you can just get them into an outing situation where they can go out, have fun, be with their team workers, their team members, and enjoy the day and have some fun in the best environment there is, the golf course, we're going to see a whole lot more productivity, and we're going to see a whole lot more results. And it was an interesting conversation because we were trading selling ideas back and forth. I've known him a long time, and I respect his judgment when it comes to marketing. But I thought his comment about so much of our work now is done in a very tight workspace with equipment and software. And he said people are just climbing up the wall to get out of that environment because they find it so confining. Solution, let's plan just what you said, Ted. Let's plan a golf outing. Let's get them out on the course. Throw in a lunch and some fun and some competition maybe, and let's really enjoy ourselves in, as you said, the best possible environment there is. A fun outing to get you out of the office, I think, is a wonderful idea, and it kind of blends in with what you were talking about earlier.
Well, and again, just to add a little bit to this, one of the reasons why I feel, obviously I enjoy and love playing golf, and I love teaching golf, but I think that there is a real opportunity for a lot of businesses. And here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is they think that they've got to be, a scratch player, or they've got to be a very low handicap golfer. No, you just have to have a willingness to want to go out and have fun. And even if you're not the greatest golfer, clients don't care. Because I guarantee you most of them are not the greatest golfer either. So they're going to be a little bit nervous and maybe a little bit uncomfortable at first. So, be honest about it. Say, hey, you know what, I'm not the greatest golfer, but hey, let's go out and have a couple of hours and maybe just play a quick 9 and get to know one another. And here's the thing, too, that I would caution a lot of people. When you get out to the golf course, one of the worst things that you can do is just jump right into business. Get out there and talk. For the first, 30, 40 minutes, get to know one another, find out what he or she is interested in outside of their business.
Personal side again, you're right.
Again, personal side, that's developing that relationship. And then, maybe when you get around the turn, depending on if you're playing a full round, then you can talk a little bit more about what you can do or offer some suggestions on maybe how you can improve their business or whatever the case may be. If you're selling a product, you can talk a little bit about product. But one of the biggest mistakes, Peter, that I've seen with a lot of people in and out of the golf business is that they get their customer or potential customer in there, and right away they're in with the hard sell. And as well as I do, as soon as that happens, the blinders go on, the ears shut, and people are, they're looking for the exit because they don't want it. And that goes back to making people feel important, make them feel like they're, that they're not just a number or a purchase order, that they're human beings. And I think when you build those relationships, that comes through very clearly. And people are more apt, as you said, there's a trust that gets built, and there's a familiarity that gets built between you and your customers, out on the golf course.
There sure is, and I want to pick up on that word trust because you've mentioned it a couple of times, and it is so important in dealing with people, because people want to do business with people that, first of all, they can trust, and along with that, they want to do business with people that they like and they respect. These qualities are often hard to find today, and when we can show them live, either on the course or in our businesses, we tend to automatically differentiate ourselves from all those who don't exhibit them. And I always like to think that if people like you and respect you and they trust you as a person, not with what you're selling, as you made the point earlier, if they like you, respect you, and they trust you, you start to really enjoy a whole new role or a whole new status. You almost become a trusted and a respected advisor to the folks you're doing business with, and if you can do that, business just has to flow and results just have to follow. It is almost an automatic. And I think if we really want to wrap up these tips, I like to use a quick way that we can remind ourselves to make sure that we do keep the focus on people. And it's this simple. Just try switching roles for a moment and think like a customer.
Right.
Because when we're the customer looking for products or services that are important to us, don't we want to buy from people who get to really know us and engage us, as you said earlier, Ted, who care about what we need instead of just selling us whatever their product or their service happens to be? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. Of course we do.
Sure.
And when we do switch roles, it's really easy to see our customers as people just like us. And that builds that like factor and respect factor I talked about with you a moment ago. And that in itself, this role switching, if you will, automatically puts people first. And it, as you said earlier, not only are we putting people first, but we're at the starting blocks now to build the positive customer relationship with them.
Right. And I think, personal experiences are a great thing, as well. I think that a lot of, for instance, golf professionals that are maybe working at a golf course and they're promoting their facility, people want to have an idea of what kind of experience they're going to have. And so it's kind of nice to hear from other customers. And that's certainly, we've all seen product endorsements. We've all seen, testimonials and things like that. And they're certainly good. But, at the same time, I want to know what kind of experience I'm going to have when I go to that person's golf course. I want to know, and I maybe have a more skeptical eye because I'm within the industry, so I know kind of what I'm looking for. But again, I want to know when I walk through the door. I mean, obviously, if I'm, if I was playing at a private facility or something, I would hope that they're going to remember who I am. But if I'm at a resort course or something like that, where they're literally having thousands of people come through, and this is my first time experience with them. I want them to make it the most memorable that they possibly can. And, sometimes there's going to be a hitch here and there that's going to happen. But I'm going to watch to see how they react to that. And that, again, goes to the personal experience. And I think that how they treat me and how they respond to my concerns or needs helps to add to that trust value.
Yeah, no question about it. I had a great conversation the other day with a teaching pro, and we were tossing around some selling ideas. And as I looked at his website, I could see that he had captured beautifully, showing visually on his website what he could do to ensure a fun and enjoyable experience if people were coming to him for lessons. And it just spoke through the visuals on his site. Now, sure, he had his teaching process there. He had other features about what he did and how he did it. He had his blog, of course, and he had testimonials. But what really stood out to me, and I really came back to this. I said, you've really nailed the personal, fun, enjoyable experience element of why people would want to come and book a lesson with you. And I think that really plays well with what you were talking about in terms of that memorable experience. You know, we both live in Florida. We know the success that Disney has had. Well, everybody points to Disney, but it's a great example because it's all about experience. I have yet to hear anybody bring their family back from Disney or go without their family and not just rave about every element of the park they were in, what the attraction was, what the experience of the attraction was, how much fun they had, how much they enjoyed it, and they are absolute masters at it. Now, I'm not suggesting we're Disney, but those same principles apply to all of our businesses. And the more time we can spend thinking about how we can give a memorable buying experience to the folks we're selling, the better off we're going to be. And as I said earlier, the results just have to follow.
I think an element, you're right, exactly right, Peter. I think an element that's also missing from many businesses today, and even here in the golf industry, is that customer service. You know, once we've gotten them in the door, again, it alludes to what I just talked to a moment ago, is, you know, what kind of experience is that customer going to have? There's always going to be, even at Disney, I guarantee you, there's going to be little hiccups and glitches along the way.
Sure there are.
But what Disney does so well is once they identify where the problem is, they move with literally lightning speed into rectifying that situation and making sure that anybody that may be or potentially may be affected, that issue is rectified immediately. And that's something that I think the golf industry also needs to do. If somebody is not, and we've talked about this on Coach's Corner at other times. In fact, I think we talked about it last week. You know, if somebody is not getting what they feel they need, or they're not willing to put in their part of it, then sometimes, you know, you have to part ways. Sometimes that relationship is not meant to go on, and you have to be a big enough person to say, you know what, maybe this situation is not working out for both interests, because it also takes a commitment on the consumer's part as well. If they're going to come and take lessons from me or Mike or Pete, as we talked about earlier, then they need to make a certain commitment as well, other than financials. They need to be willing to put in some time and effort to be able to put some of the principles in practice. But again, if you build a solid relationship with the consumers up front, they will, as you pointed out, Peter, they will trust and rely on your experience to guide them to that next level. But if they don't feel confident, or they don't feel they can trust or respect, and that doesn't mean that you're a bad person, it just means you haven't gained that trust initially, then they're going to be apprehensive and resistant and may not come back to your facility. So, you know, as golf professionals and as golf club owners, you know, we need to be conscious of that. It's a very competitive world. Golf is extremely competitive, like every other business. Because just because your golf course doesn't physically move, you know, doesn't mean that everybody's going to, you know, when you open your doors in the morning, everybody's coming to play. You know, exactly. Right?
Absolutely. And you touched on relationships, and I think, you know, the general element of relationships are really that we really all want and need relationships when we're dealing with people, and that really doesn't matter whether it's in our businesses or in our personal lives. You know, relationships are kind of fundamental. They in personal life they give us a sense of caring and belonging, which is essential to us as people, and in business, if we play it right, they can make everything a whole lot easier, a whole lot faster. I loved your comment about Disney with the lightning speed. They can make it a whole lot easier, a whole lot faster, more convenient, and more reliable for our customers. And most of the time, that's really what they're looking for. So once we start with that memorable buying experience that we've both been talking about, then we can build on that to maintain the relationship that has started off so well because there was such a positive experience to start it off with. And you and I both know, and we've talked about this, Ted, that, you know, the best relationships that we all have, whether they're personal or business, once we start them, are really long-term, and in a lot of cases, they really never end. So that really, I think when you move from understanding your customer as people and moving them into understanding their needs and so on. Relationships really are the direct outcome of our skill in mastering that art of understanding people, and then going on and working with them and perhaps selling them down the road on their terms.
Right. And again, I think this moves nicely into really the second part, as you said, building relationships. We want to build them obviously today, but we want them to last to tomorrow. And having an understanding of that, building these relationships, one of the things that we have to be careful of is, and again, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but we're talking about golf here. We want them to come back to that facility, or we want them to continue on taking more lessons, to help develop their skill level. And if we're not defining that relationship very early on by incorporating a level of trust and reliance and respect, then we're not going to have that relationship tomorrow. And we want to garner away from the quick sale, what I refer to as the today business. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there in many industries that are in the today business. They want to get the sale today. They don't care about tomorrow. And in golf, as an instructor, you can't survive. It's all about relationships. You certainly can run, if you're in I'll give you a good example. We had a young teacher professional on the Women of Golf show Tuesday with LPGA professional Cindy Miller and I. And she is up in an area in Colorado where there is a grand total population of about 10,000. So not a very big population. But they've got, I think she said, about 4 or 5 golf courses in that small area. So there's obviously people who are interested in golf. And it comes to mind, this theory here is, if she was not developing and building relationships in her practice, in her golf practice, it wouldn't take long to get through all of those people. So there, suddenly she doesn't have that steady stream of new customers. So it's extremely important in a position like hers to build relationships, because she doesn't have hundreds of thousands or millions of people to deal with. She's only got 10,000 in her immediate community. So building those long-term relationships is extremely important for her business. Otherwise, she'd be out of business.
Yeah,
right?
And I think absolutely. And I think a big part of this whole relationship building thing is the way we communicate with the people we're serving or with our customers. And we got a lot of ways to do that. Obviously, there's email programs out there like MailChimp and Constant Contact, and we can post on social media. You were talking about that earlier, and text and phone call follow-up. And some of the special things that I've seen that are really work and are highly personalized is I just love to see folks that use handwritten thank you notes. And yeah, they really do work. And they when they're used, they can really set you apart from the pack when you use them. And I think that what's really important in a relationship, as it always is, and it doesn't matter whether it's personal or business, but communicating with the folks at the other end and using the programs that are out there to do that, and then personalizing the way we communicate really helps to foster and to build the relationship. And we can communicate with them if we've done that earlier stage where we've learned as much as we can about them. And then the thing that I always like to do when I'm communicating in a relationship, I like to use the communication channels that whoever I'm speaking to likes best. And automatically that fosters that relationship and builds that relationship that we started with the positive buying experience that we talked about earlier. So I think that the communication element is really important to, especially, we're going to invest a lot of time in building relationships. And we want to make sure that we're getting a payoff out of it. And I think that by communicating effectively and well with all the ways that we do have to communicate and making it personal and using the channel that they like best, I think goes a long way to really making that happen. And I think it also builds comfort from the other side. Through that communication, through that communication, they feel comfortable with us. You talked about this earlier in terms of what is the environment when you go in through that front door. You want folks and I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying it happens over time, and it happens with one ton of work. But when as you said earlier, when the personal work and commitment is put into it, folks start to feel more comfortable with us. And as we said earlier, they trust us. And that's going to build the relationship, and it has to create selling opportunities for us and more sales. Because the fact of the matter is, when we're building relationships, we're really building selling opportunities through those relationships. And I think that one of the things about selling opportunities, when we have this trust factor and we have this belief factor and comfort factor with the folks we are dealing with, they'll be very willing to give us referrals to even more people. And usually, as you and I have talked before, referrals often lead to faster buying decisions. And then as we have talked before, referrals will connect us to their networks. So here we go again. More selling opportunities, more business growth, more decisions happening. There's a huge business multiplier effect here if we can take advantage of springboarding that relationship, working it, fostering it through communication and understanding. The payoff is phenomenal. And I think something else that's really important here, and getting down to the personal side of things, as we've been talking about throughout tonight's broadcast, through the coaching segment and also with you and I, Ted. Something we often miss here, and I think this is really important for us to remember as business owners, and it really doesn't matter whether we're in the golf industry or not. But I happen to think, and there's a real personal payoff here when we build these relationships. There's a real satisfaction factor that we feel when we can build a positive relationship with people. People were there to serve, and people were there to work with, people were there to build relationships and sell with. When we do this well, it can really make us feel good about ourselves. And we start to feel a real sense of pride about the relationship building job that we've done. And let's be honest, when we're in our own business, some days out there can be really demanding and really de-energizing. And I don't need to explain that to you. I don't need to explain that to you. So we all need a positive boost. And I like to think that we can get a positive boost from this relationship building that comes from communicating and understanding and personal contact with folks. And I really think that's an important element of what we've been talking about tonight. It's that personal benefit for us as business owners.
Right, and that's really the reason, why I wanted to do these two segments, is I wanted to, give them some specific tips that you put together, and of course, this goes back to what I talked to earlier, and we'll try to get through this as quick as we can, because I know that we're limited for time. But
good.
The two segments were really a springboard to your selling program, Go for the Green Selling Challenge. So I want to, if you can, just take a moment or two to talk about that. All of these things that we've talked about the last two segments, last week on September 8th, and of course tonight, is available in your Go for the Green Selling Challenge. So where can the listeners that want to go in and take advantage of that? It's a great product that you put together that really encapsulates all of what we've been talking about the last couple of nights.
Great. Well, I appreciate that, but the first thing I'd like to do is have a little bit of fun. Do we have time for a rapid fire exercise? I would really like to do this if we can take a couple of minutes. First of all, some background, and I'll go through this really quickly because I think this really wraps up exactly what we've been talking about. And then I want to talk about Go for the Green Selling Challenge. While I was preparing for tonight's show, I received an online customer survey from our bank asking customers to rate it on 8 items. Talk about super timing. I couldn't believe it. The survey captures everything we've been talking about tonight. And I'd be remiss for your audience, Ted, if I didn't have some fun with this. And
Sure.
I'm sorry, I borrowed that from Faraday, okay, because he always does rapid fire. And as you know, I'm a big Faraday fan. We talked about that
Right.
last week. So let's
Right.
have some fun and give this thing a shot. First, here's the
Okay.
question. Do your customers say this about your business? 1, it makes me feel like I've made a smart choice. 2,
Right.
it's very helpful. 3, it listens. Sound familiar, Ted? 4,
Mhm.
it's always looking out for me. 5, it's working hard to earn my business. 6, it's a business I can trust. 7, it's a business I value. It's a business that makes it easy to do business. Yikes, was that on target? And I guess my final
Wow.
question to the folks out there is, so how, to coin a phrase from our good friends at Capital One, so how does your business rate? Anyway, I want to talk. I felt that was really relevant to what we're still going to wrap up.
Yeah,
because I want to tie these segments together, and I know our time is short. But let's bring this all in for a landing now.
Okay.
We've been talking tonight about people and relationship building tips, and there are 2 of the 7 tips that you and I have been talking about in this 2-part series as ways to increase sales and grow our businesses, whether in golf or outside of golf. I'm a big believer in summing up. So here are the 7 tips, all 7 of them, one more time. First, we talked about the 3 Ps for business performance. And those 3 Ps are preparation, planning, and, of course, the extended version of people tonight. Then we talked about grabbing your goals. We then talked about asking the right questions, and then listening for the answers carefully, learning from those answers, and applying those answers as solutions in our businesses. Then we talked about the fun part of this whole 7 group. Sell the benefits. Get out there, get excited, and sell the benefits of your business. Then get a commitment to action from whom you're speaking to. And then, as we've covered tonight, a big segment on building relationships, which is so important for not only today but tomorrow. And I've really, really, really enjoyed sharing these tips with you last week and tonight. And thank you so much for the opportunity to do so. I believe in these tips. I use them every day, so I really know that they work. But the most important thing, because this has been my role over these last 2 sessions, most importantly, you out there in the audience can now put them all to work in building your businesses. And that's really the important mission that I've had in these 2 sessions. As I said earlier, I wanted to talk very quickly about Go for the Green Selling Challenge. You gave me a great introduction in my own introduction. Our product is really, as you said, a whole new way to sharpen your selling game online by linking the fun of golf to selling. And it's really a fun product. It's been designed that way, and it ties together beautifully golf and selling. Because just like in golf, you'll in the challenge, you'll learn and improve your selling skills in the practice module, then play to test them on a virtual golf course. And the folks out there could check it out at mygoforthegreen.com. And they can also reach me because I'm always pleased to help your audience grow their businesses. My email is peter@mygoforthegreen.com. And our website, of course, is mygoforthegreen.com. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Ted. Neither of us thought we could really get through all this tonight, but we managed to do it rather well, if I might take mutual credit for both of us. Over to you.
You certainly can. Well, thank you, Peter, and as always, I appreciate your thoughts and input. And as I said earlier, we first were setting this up, I felt that these were important segments to have on the show. And what I try to do, I follow the 3 Ps, of course, preparation, planning, and of course, people. I like to share my thoughts and views, but I also like to share the thoughts and views of my guests. And I feel that what you came here to talk about the last 2 sessions here on Golf Talk Live can really be applied to any business, but certainly can be applied to the golf business, those in the golf industry, and those that maybe want to use golf as a business tool, as I touched on a little bit earlier. So I would strongly suggest that those listening to the show, that you go to Peter's website, My Go for the Green Selling Challenge, which is mygoforthegreen.com, and take the challenge and learn some of the things that we talked about tonight. I think it's just a great opportunity. Peter, I want to thank you very much for coming on to Golf Talk Live and sharing that with my audience the last couple of weeks.
Ted, it's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I've enjoyed preparing for it. I've enjoyed the interchanges and the discussions that you and I have had. I've learned a ton, so I should really be thanking you. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and I'm very, very grateful that we've been able to put these tips out, and I'm very hopeful, and I'm expecting and attracting that your audience will put them to work and get the value that, as I said earlier, has been my task and my mission in the 2 sessions.
Well, perfect. Again, Peter, I want to thank you very much for joining me on Golf Talk Live. It's a pleasure, and we'll be in touch with one another here shortly, and we'll continue on this journey. But thank you for joining me on Golf Talk Live and sharing all of this with my audience the last couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, Ted.
All right. You have a great evening.
Bye. You bet. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, that was my very special, my breaking up here. We're literally going off air, so I want to, again, thank my Coach's Corner panel, Pete Buchanan and Mike Fay, and, of course, my very special guest, Mr. Peter Willis. Thank you, and I will see you next week right here live on Golf Talk Live. Good night, everybody.